Nickelodeon, that mostly forgotten network nowadays, which is also notorious for making some pretty bad decisions, and some of those decisions just happen to be bad TV shows. These shows are some of the most pathetic, desperate attempts to restore any ratings left to that network, and we're going to talk about those shows today. And this network has honestly gotten so bad to the point where Nick at Night has more creativity in the shows that they air on their network. Why? Because the main Nickelodeon channel has become a hub for movies. 80% of this channel's airtime is spent to Despicable Me reruns. Why? Because some of these shows are so bad that they actually lower the quality of the network themselves. And we're going to be checking them out, the top 10 worst Nickelodeon shows. And once again, if you do get enjoyment out of these shows or find them interesting, that's great. It's good to know other people can like the things I can't. So with that said, let's get started. Number 10. The Alvin and the Chipmunks reboot. The original Alvin and the Chipmunks cartoon was a cartoon I never really found that interesting. I didn't find it bad, but it's really a show that was not for me. The pacing of each episode is very slow, which makes it extremely boring, and the characters were not interesting, and the voices were always a bit too squeaky and high-pitched, which came off as very annoying. But at the same time, I can see how someone else could like it. It was creative for the 80s, so it was at least original, which makes it not bad. This cartoon, the voices here sound like they're being voiced by ants who just ate an entire bag of Dominic sugar. And the music in the intro, it more so closely resembles the noise small children make with the top of a drinking glass than an actual theme song. And besides all that, the plots are just so uninteresting and boring to get through. They're somehow even less interested in the stories on the original. And Alvin is not a very interesting character to watch. Each episode is the same thing. He causes trouble and realizes he's wrong by the end. And the animation on this cartoon is so choppy and half done that the chipmunks look more like people than the actual people in the show. The only real difference between the two is that the chipmunks are significantly shorter. Was it just too much of an inconvenience to draw hair on them? It shows jokes when they try to be funny. They're particularly unfunny. Nothing about this show stood out as interesting or again, but at the same time, it's at the start of the list because it's not too bad. The plots could be okay every once in a while, and there's nothing offensively bad about it like some of the other cartoons on the list, so it earns a high spot on the list. And the 9th worst is Tyler Prairie's Young Dylan. You guys remember that very and painfully annoying, overprivileged, unfunny kid that was young Sheldon? You know, that one kid that is so painfully unfunny, and his one gimmick is that, oh, he's super smart, but he's only a child. Well, one day, someone over at Nickelodeon thought, hey, we should remake that show, but for kids, and we should really make the pretentious levels off the chart. If you are interested in that, I introduced to you Young Dylan. The show is so bad that even the theme song was a pain to get through. This really is one of the worst theme songs I've heard in my life. The bad rapping is just so hard to listen to. But besides all that, the biggest problem with the show is Young Dylan himself. He's so self-entitled and annoying that it's hard to be even the slightest bit interested in anything that happens in the show. Sheldon's actually starting to look like a carefully crafted out, well-intelligent masterpiece by comparison. That's how bad this show has gotten. The acting on this show was particularly bad. I know for the kids it's not fair to judge them because it's probably their first time acting, and they're very unexperienced in the job, and so the kids actually do okay compared to all the adults in the show. The adults' performances each one gets worse than the last. Each character is more unfunny than the last one. And all the adults really look like they'd rather be anywhere else than voicing this show. The laugh track is so overused on the show, it's unbelievable. Anytime a character says something, the audience just starts laughing. Really, was it that funny? I mean, every time these characters finish a sentence, I just feel like giving up on the show, but the laugh track disagrees with me on that one. At the same time, this show is only number 9 on the list because of how bad it is and with how many problems it does have. It's really not the worst thing out there. Whenever the show is making jokes other than the fact that Dylan's one of the worst characters ever, it's possibly kind of funny. And the kids do a pretty decent job at acting. So because of that, the show earns a high spot on the list, but definitely avoid this show. And the 8th worst is 44 Cats. Wow. And I thought the Alvin and the Chipmunks cartoon looked bad. That clearly wasn't even close to as bad as computer-made animation could possibly get. This animation is so bad that it actually makes the head of the Dunkin' Donuts animation executive department look like... So by comparison, and all the voice acting in the show, all the voices sound the exact same. I wouldn't be surprised if they were all done by 2 people. Some of the voices don't even sound like they're voiced by people. They sound like they're being voiced by the computers themselves.
Spaghetti and meatballs! That means danger!
All the plots have absolutely no creativity thrown into them. Every episode is about these 4 cats trying to get spaghetti and meatballs, and they just kind of stand around waiting for it to happen. Were they trying to bore kids to death? This show really is dull, to the point where I can't even find anything to say about it. Nothing unique happens in the show, and the setting is always their town, their badly drawn town. I really do think that kids would be more fascinated and entertained by doing absolutely nothing for 10 minutes instead of watching an episode of this show. This show is boring. It has absolutely nothing to it and no value. And the animation looks like it was done in 5 minutes. Definitely give this one a skip. And the 7th worst is Boss Baby Back in Business. This whole cartoon just feels like one lesson. The lesson being not to exploit or overuse an already not so good movie franchise. This whole cartoon is just so poorly planned and cheap looking. I wouldn't be surprised if it was thrown together in 2 days. And Boss Baby is not a very interesting character to watch. I bet anyone would definitely not want to watch 2 whole seasons of him. His only character is that he's smart and he's a baby, and the show really overuses that fact. They bring it up in every episode. It wasn't exactly funny in the pilot. The plots in this one are at least a tiny bit interesting, yet at the same time the plot's so back and forth from the babies being super intelligent and seeing the world from a baby's point of view that it's very confusing and annoying to watch. They just can't go with one or the other. And the animation on this cartoon is such a dramatic decrease from the original movies that I wouldn't be surprised if it was animated by a pile of bricks themselves, or they just took clips of the actual movie and just edited them to make them look worse. This cartoon was lazily animated. The plots are so back and forth and sometimes extremely boring. And I have a new view on the Boss Baby movies just by watching the first episode of this show. Definitely give this one a skip. And the 6th worst is Game Shakers. Why is it that the further deep into these live action shows we get, the worse they get, and the more painfully unfunny they are? This is another one of those sitcoms where the audience laughs anytime the characters finish a sentence. The laugh track here is not as bad as it was in Young Dylan, but they still laugh at a lot of very unfunny jokes. And the acting on this show is also bad. For the kids, I mean, once again, I do get it. They're kids, they're not as experienced, but the adults really do a pretty bad job once again. And the worst part about this is that the concept and plot doesn't sound half bad. It sounds kind of decent. So the plot According to Google, it's supposed to be about 4 teenagers who started a mobile game and a rapper tried to sue them. That sounds like an okay concept, but they never roll with that. The only real thing I got at this show is just bad jokes and kids being annoying for 22 minutes. I feel like this show was an insult to 4 different generations just by existing. And the characters here were especially uninteresting. Most of the character traits and plots have to do with the fact that the 4 kids keep causing problems at their job, or they very loudly talk about their obsession with the internet. No one I met acts like this. Everything from the bad acting, badly written scripts, characters that are some of the worst representations of the last 4 generations I ever seen in TV, definitely earns this show a slot on the list. This show is very unentertaining, gives no value, and is constantly laughing at its own terrible jokes, and is an insult to millions of people by its existence. Definitely give this one a skip. And the 5th worst is Rabbids Invasion. Oh, this show is that kind of show. We finally reached the shows that just by looking at the intro, it guaranteed itself a slot in the top 5. Maybe if these babbling, screechy things weren't the start of every episode, the show wouldn't be so bad to get through. This show has absolutely no plot at all. I think it's supposed to be about these thousands of these rabbit things living somewhere, and scientists try to run studies on them, but it's never clear where they live. They're in a different slot in every episode, and there's no real intelligence or thought between why they're in these situations. They just throw them in there, hoping that we buy whatever stupid thing the writers came up with. And these things really do sound like car alarms with the collective IQ of a preschool dropout. And the animation here is just as much thought as every other aspect of the show. I wouldn't be surprised if this entire show was thrown together on some random Tuesday afternoon by a bunch of people who still use MySpace trying to look cool and appeal to kids. And the creators actually gave the rabbits some real conflict to deal with. This might just work for that one episode, and the pacing here is extremely slow-paced and broken. They spend so much time on one thing, clearly just trying to kill time because there's only so much you can do with these annoying things. Everything about this show is so simple and has such little thought that it actually makes Caillou look like a carefully crafted, well-entertaining masterpiece by comparison. And the worst part is, I think the creators and writers actually think this is highbrow and quality entertainment. They just seem so proud of these pieces of animation that took 10 minutes to make. Maybe this show is extremely high quality, real entertainment to somebody out there, but to me it was just lazy. The characters had all the complexity of a pile of dust, and the stories are so painfully simple, anyone would be cringing at them. Definitely give this one a skip. Anyone deserves a smarter show than this. And the 4th worst is the JoJo and Bobo Show, which is the dumbest name I've heard all day. And I know I recently talked about this show a couple videos ago, but this list really would not be complete without this show. Wait, no, it's not a show. In fact, the executives and employees at Nickelodeon hated this so much that they threw it onto their YouTube channel and only air it during commercial breaks in between much better shows. So not even the Nickelodeon employees had any faith in this cheaply slapped together piece of animation. The fact that this show even existed at all is just a tiny glimpse into what life would look like if 6-year-old girls were the head execs over at Nickelodeon. This cartoon was made around 2017, back when JoJo Siwa was everywhere with her empty, uninteresting pop music, but she was really appealing to little girls back then. There's plenty of reasons to not like her nowadays, but back then is when she was a overly safe, child-friendly artist. And that popularity led to her getting her own TV show, which has animation that looks worse than stick figures. And all the voices in this show are all done by JoJo Siwa herself. And that's probably why the show only has two main characters, because these two main characters' voices really do sound ear-splitting. But you guys have already heard me go on about this show before, and if you want, you can check out that video. I'll leave the link in the description below. Let's just move on. And the third worst is the really loud house. So Nickelodeon is known for not making the best decisions, and the loud house just so happens to be one of the properties that they made some pretty questionably bad decisions with. And making it live action is easily the worst decision they've ever made with the franchise. One of the worst decisions they made in general. And the really loud house is just the perfect example of why this thing doesn't work. The pilot alone is so stupid that I felt my brain disintegrating as I watched it. So the plot is about Lincoln trying to watch some show with his best friend at midnight, but then the dad makes a rule where they can't stay up past midnight. And then the dad takes the kids to a restaurant at midnight. Did 5 people write the script for this episode? Did anybody proofread this? And the acting on this show, it can be in a category of its own. The only real plus I could think of is that this show doesn't use the laugh track whenever any character finishes a sentence. Probably because the show itself is aware of how stupid these jokes are.
Great night, and if you're driving home, please take a car.
These jokes are the dumbest jokes in possibly Nickelodeon history. Not a single thing in the show is funny. This show was just a bad, desperate attempt to cash in on the success of the Loud House. It is terribly acted, nothing fits, and it's extremely unfunny. If you care about this franchise, just stick to the Loud House seasons 1 and 2. And the second worst is the Patrick Star Show. I know I already discussed how much I do not like this show, but this show is so astonishingly awful that the list would just feel extremely empty and lacking if this show wasn't at least mentioned for this list. When I first got the plan to do this list, this show was the first show that came to mind. But I already talked about it, so I'm going to try to keep it brief. But this whole show really is so incoherent that I wouldn't be surprised if the plots were written by mixing together bits and pieces of the nightmares the creative staff had when they were kids. This show is so stupid it actually makes Skibidi Toilet look deep and insightful. At least there was some plot throughout the videos. Here it's just one big stream of stupidity and bouncing from one scene to the next, and nothing here is funny. And in an episode I recently just found out, this show calls out all the critics of the show. And the episode would go on to claim that the biggest problem with the show is that it's not grounded in reality, which is a complaint no critic has ever made about this show. The problem with the show is that it's so proud that it's extremely stupid. And this show, despite every bad thing about it, still remains one of the most popular shows on Nickelodeon. This show is getting renewed for a 5th season on Nickelodeon, the network that is known for canceling any original idea. There's so many shows that got canceled that are so much better than this one, and this tends to be the show that remains to still be popular to this day. But hey, you probably already heard all about this show and all the ways it's bad and how it's bad entertainment for kids to be watching, so we can just leave it at this show. Stories are so poorly written, and every character is extremely stupid and feels like the exact same character. This show is definitely worth a skip from both you and especially from the kids. I really thought Patrick Star's show was as bad as Nickelodeon got, but I was surprised once again. They came up with one experiment that was even worse, and yes, it was popular for quite some time. But enough putting it off, let's talk about it. And the number 1 worst Nickelodeon show is Ryan's Mystery Playdate. Wow. I don't think shows get much lazier than this. This entire show looks like it was recorded in the family's house. And out of all the channels on YouTube they could have picked to make a TV show about, they picked Ryan's Toy Reviews, which is the bare minimum somebody can do to be required content and appeal to kids. But apparently that was a very popular channel, popular enough to get its own show. And for some reason on this show, all the effects are just so much worse than they were in the actual YouTube videos. All the effects and the editing here are so bad and so cheap looking. And for the plots, absolutely nothing happens. The videos had more of a story than any episode of the show. It's just Ryan and his parents walking around some studio, which is probably their house. The Patrick Star Show may have been bad, but at least there was some effort put in. There was creativity, even though it was bad, and it was at least a lot better than this. But apparently I'm wrong about this show. Apparently enough kids actually sat down and cared about this show for them to make a sequel called Ryan Levels Up. So maybe this is appealing to somebody, but this is the laziest TV show I've ever watched. Each character just gets worse than the last, and there's only about 6 in total. And the terrible flash animation they use on 2 of the characters, it would look much better if they just used actual storyboards themselves. Everything from the bad acting, the extremely simple non-existent stories, the randomly thrown in celebrities that look like they'd rather be anywhere else, and the terrible flash animation, and the fact that this show makes the original Ryan's YouTube channel look like a 10-star show by comparison, is enough to make it the worst of the worst for Nickelodeon for me, and I definitely consider it the worst Nickelodeon show of all time. As much as I hate on these shows, I don't actually hate Nickelodeon as a network. It's definitely not a very good one nowadays. They have no variety in their schedule, and they overused the same 2 franchises until people had enough of them. But thankfully, for the majority of these shows, they have an extremely small or extremely young fan base behind them. So they're not too popular. Do you guys agree with my list? Let me know in the comments down below. Even leave your list, or tell me if I missed a couple really bad ones. Thanks for watching. Bye.